Hi guys, Mark Kwok here. Today I want to talk a little bit about Watches and Wonders 2023. This event just happened. And by the way, I have like a little guest here. We're dog sitting. This is TT. But yeah, she'll be roaming around a little bit. But wanted to talk a little bit about this because this is like the Super Bowl of watches, guys. So I'm gonna focus on maybe around like 6 or 7 different models that I'm hugely a fan of or have some thoughts about. So let's go right into it. So first brand, Rolex, of course, because they own like basically a third of the luxury watch market. So that's what most people are interested in. So the first and the biggest news, of course, is gonna be the Rolex Daytona, the hottest Rolex watch out there. I have one right here. This is an older version, but they came out with the refresh, and boy, does it look exactly like the one before from 2016. So if you look at photos and you look at side by side between the latest Daytona and the one before it, it is almost identical. There's a couple changes. There's like a metal ring on the outside of the bezel. There's some, the indices are slightly different. But man, if you wanna, stick to the tried and true, I mean, they've done it yet again. Rolex basically made almost no changes, complete refresh, and they consider it a new watch. Some would argue this is a problem. I think it's exactly what Rolex has done with their subs, their GMTs, everything. I mean, they make really small iterative changes. Why would you take a legendary watch that has been kind of deemed as one of the greatest of all history and change it if it's working? So here's my major thought. I'm clearly invested in Daytona because I love this watch. It's probably my favorite watch, probably. And I'd say this, if you liked the Daytona before, you're gonna like the Daytona now. If you didn't like the Daytona before, you're not gonna like the Daytona now. I will say that there is one thing that I think may be somewhat monumental when it comes to the Rolex Daytona. I mean, they have a new movement out, the 4131, which replaces the 4130 that's in this bad boy. And for the Platona, the top of the end platinum Daytona, they created a sapphire display case back. So you can see the back of the watch and you see the movement. I think this might be Rolex's very first sapphire case back, which, to be honest, I'm still trying to wrap my head. I know to some people this is like not that big of a deal because most of the other watch manufacturers does it, but Rolex does not do this normally. All their case backs are solid. So to do this is a huge step in a specific direction. And so I don't know if it was the greatest move. I think they could have just done fine. They probably would have to spend a little bit more to keep the platinum on the case back for the Platona, but they did it before. Just keep doing that. I mean, I don't know if that change is going to be one that's gonna benefit them. It's not gonna really show their strengths. Anyhow, that's the Daytona. Let's move on. The second one I wanna talk about is a new line completely. And now they are on to what's known as the 1908 or the Perpetual collection. Depends on kind of how you're looking at it. But it is a new set of watches that look like a dress watch. I think that the designs they came out with on this are beautiful. They're great. I think they are right up there with all the high horology brands out there. But to be honest, at the price point that they're offering it, you're now making a one-to-one decision. Do I buy a Rolex 1908 or do I buy a Patek Philippe Calatrava? And the truth is, I think most people will end up buying the Calatrava. So we'll see if this was a right move or not, but just FYI, that's happening. So I say overall thumbs up, good to rebrand, etc. Will I get one? Will I replace the Calatrava? I don't think so. So we'll see if this actually does sales. Number 3 that came out with Rolex is the Rolex Explorer 40, which is just basically the exact same thing as the Rolex Explorer 1 36mm, but just upsized to a 40mm. This kind of replaces the 39mm Rolex Explorer that was kind of this weird middle ground as well. I think it looks better than the 39mm. And I don't think this is like cause for concern or a big news thing. It's kind of natural. Like they have a Datejust 36 and a 41. They have a Day-Date 36 and a Day-Date 40. This is just the same thing. Explorer 40 or Explorer 36. If you have a smaller wrist, go with 36. If you have a bigger wrist, go with the 40. They really should have released these two at the same time, the new 36 and the new 40. I think they just kind of lagged at it, so it seems like this big announcement. But really, it's just another option on something that, I don't know, Rolex does have these multi-size options. It's like a normal thing. I think it's a good move. I think it looks good. I think I wouldn't get it, but I think for those that need a little bit bigger wrist presence, go with the Explorer 140mm instead of the 36. Quickly, there are a couple also like big, controversial pieces. Like they have an Oyster Perpetual that has all these colorful bubbles in it. I think I don't know if I like it. I wouldn't buy one. I think it will become very highly demanded some reason just because it's funky. I don't know, does nothing for me. And then the Yachtmaster, which came out in all titanium. This is their first Rolex kind of like, I'd say like general population Rolex, because they did one which was this giant 50 millimeter deep sea, but they have like a more general watch that is made of titanium. And I think this is to bring in a new era of a lot of titanium watches. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a titanium GMT, a titanium Submariner, titanium Sea Dweller, like all coming in the future. I like titanium on my Apple Watch Ultra. I don't know if I would consider it the ultimate metal for me or anything like that, but you know, we'll see what happens. And it's a good place to start with the Yachtmaster. Kind of dab your feet into it. I think that's what they're doing, seeing if, oh, will people buy this? Will people not? It's a good move as a company, and so yeah, we'll see how it goes. So now let's move on to my favorite brand, which is Patek Philippe. All right, so they had a ton of new launches. I would say the vast majority of them, I don't like, either I'm way out of the market for it because these are like hundreds and hundreds of $1,000 watches, or it's these more sort of esoteric watches out there. But I do think there are a couple that I think go to the mainstream that are great releases. The first watch that I want to talk about is the 5924G. This is the travel time. So it's like a pilot watch that has like a GMT function, but with a chronograph. I think these watches are really cool. It seems like Patek Philippe is doubling down on the pilot watch game because honestly, the 5524 came out, it wasn't really that popular. It was popular for a moment and then stopped. It's selling below retail. So I think this is their way to say, hey, let's create some more excitement for this design that we think will hold good for moving forward for the future. And Patek Philippe always wins. Let's be real. I think in 5 years, people are gonna think of these pilot watches as like the best watches, like maybe all sold out at some point. It has that opportunity. And so I think Patek is playing this kind of chess game to figure out how to make that happen. The second big Patek Philippe release was the 6007. So the 6007, when it first came out in steel, I thought that was a beautiful watch. It was a nice blue, it was in steel. They're now doing it in white gold, and they come with these like accent colors like yellow or red. And to be honest, I don't know if I love it. So these watches, they're quite expensive. They're in white gold. They're supposed to be this middle ground between casual and dress because they're still a Calatrava. I think they may be popular. I think people might like them, but I'm not one of them. I don't think I'll be going after it. And this is coming from a person who did like the 6006, which is the predecessor to the 6007. And the last watch I want to talk about from Patek is actually an Aquanaut, the 5261R. It is a ladies' watch, but it's 40 millimeters. It's an Aquanaut. It comes with these like cool, it's an annual calendar, so it has like a moon phase and it just looks awesome. So that's the one I think that like, I just don't understand why it's a ladies model, but I would totally get that model. It is in rose gold, so I'd rather have like a white gold, but the design I think is great. And so that one I think is a hit, and it'll be hit for men because a lot of the Aquanauts are getting really big. They're like 42 plus millimeters, and then the wrist, the rubber comes out too far, so it doesn't look good on the wrist. This is a good size, and I think it could be a great fit for a lot of men. So that's the other one I'd keep an eye out on, though it would be impossible to get anyway, whatever. All right, only a couple more watches I want to talk about, but from other brands. The most exciting one, I think this is the biggest excitement for me out of all of the releases, is actually the IWC Engineer. IWC is a watch brand that I once loved, but I think they, kind of came out of fashion, or they were doing some stuff, and I don't know. I had a Portuguese at one point, but I don't have any IWC anymore. However, the Engineer, this is like, they're a little late for this, to be honest, but there has always been this opportunity for them. Gerald Genta, the guy who created the Royal Oak and the Patek Philippe Nautilus, like iconic, top hype, #1 type of watches, also created the IWC Engineer during the 70s as he like updated the design. That watch looks similar to that trio, right? The Royal Oak or the Nautilus. And some reason, IWC, even though they've had years to do this, have not recreated that original design and like taken advantage of this Gerald Genta hype that has been crazy over the past like 4 or 5 years. They finally did it. They re-released the Engineer in kind of that same design, and I freaking love it. I think it's too late to do it. I think they should have done this 3 years ago, but better late than never. This is like an Engineer that I actually might consider. When you look at the design, it definitely harkens back to that old design, but it's all the updated stuff, right? Like the bracelet looks a little bit better, and it probably feels and works better. If you like the whole Gerald Genta thing and you haven't been able to get a Royal Oak or you haven't been able to get a Nautilus, this isn't like a consolation prize. Kind of like sometimes the VC Overseas, the Vacheron Constantin Overseas. A lot of people see that as almost like a consolation prize because it's kind of like Genta-esque and by a high horology maker. But this is an actual Royal Oak equivalent, essentially. By the same maker, in the same wavelength, all that sort of stuff. So I have a feeling this is gonna be completely sold out. It's kind of expensive, honestly. It's like 12,000 bucks or something, but I would say this is the best release that they've done in a long time. Only a couple more, I swear I won't keep you long, but the Lange and Sohne Odysseus Chrono. That's another one I thought was a cool release. It is actually quite big though. It's 14 millimeters thick, it's 42 millimeters big in terms of the dial. And it is, I don't know, it's gonna be pretty expensive, I'm pretty sure. It's gonna be a lot more expensive than you want and also incredibly difficult to get. So for that reason, I'd say, you know, not something that I'm interested in, but nevertheless, I do think that it's good that they're like expanding that Odysseus line, which I think has been a smash hit for them. If I could own an Odysseus and it was possible and it was at MSRP, I might even consider that because it's a really cool watch. They make great movements, they're a great company. But yeah, I'd say that one's a thumbs up from me, but I just probably will never own it. And the last three, I'll quickly mention them off. Cartier, one of my favorite brands. I was hoping that they would do something interesting. They did come out with what's called the Patek Normale. It looks really expensive, unfortunately, but I think that's a cool kind of design. It's the Francais, the Patek Francais recently came out with an update as well, and they're kind of doing a new sort of like blockier design. I don't know, I love Cartier, so I'm interested in what they're doing. And then lastly, the only other one that I thought was quite interesting to me is the Tudor Black Bay GMT. I'm not a big Tudor guy, to be honest, but I know a lot of people are super fans of Tudor. And the one that stood out for me is the GMT, but with a white dial. Nothing revolutionary here, but it does remind me of the Meteorite dial that Rolex has. The GMT was red and blue, but then white on the inside. I think it looks really cool. So Tudor has another version of that. I think it's really cool. And those are all the releases that I think I've been most interested in. I know there are other brands like Zenith and so on that have created new models, but yeah, these are my thoughts. Rolex, Patek Philippe, IWC, like some bangers in there. So I'll keep an eye out to see how these things do and if it's even possible to get them. All right, those are my thoughts on these watches. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Mark Kwok. I will see you guys on the next one.